it's Vicky, and today I'm here to talk about the books I read in May. As I sort of hinted at in my June TBR video, May was a slow month reading-wise. It just was not a priority, and I only ended up completing 3 books. I completed 1 print book and 2 audiobooks, so yes, it was slow. It was slow, but in my defense, one of the books was over 500 pages long, so those tend to take a little more time. And yeah, let's just dive in. So I forgot to mention in the intro that I also had a DNF in May. I DNF'd Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton, and I was about 65–70% through this book, and I just gave up. Honestly, when I first started reading it, I thought to myself, I don't know about this one. It took me a while to settle into the writing. I don't know why, because it wasn't difficult or anything like that. I just was struggling for some reason. And then yeah, I just kept putting it down, and I would put it down for days, which is unlike me. I tend to, when I pick up a book and start reading it, I tend to pick it up at least once a day. And I went days without reading this book, and I did that multiple times. And I had started this book in, I want to say, the beginning of April. And so we got to about mid-May, and I hadn't picked up the book in a few days, and I was like, you know what, I just don't want to read this book anymore. Even though I'm almost through with it, I just don't want to read it anymore, so I DNF'd it. So the first book that I did complete in May was a library book that I got, and it was an anticipated 2024 release. So I listened to it on audio, but then had the physical book too, just a reference. And that book is The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Keist. And I picked this up because last year I read Gwendolyn Keist's book, The Reluctant Immortals, and I really liked it. I thought it was such a unique storyline, and I definitely told myself I kind of want to, you know, keep checking in on her new releases. And so this was a new release, and this one too had a very unique story. It's about this town called Velkwood. Well, the street anyway. The main street was called Velkwood, and our main character, I cannot remember what her first name was. I want to say it was something like Talitha or something like that. I can't remember, and I didn't write it down, of course. But her last name is Velkwood, and so like her family has been in this town for a long time. And something weird happens to this town decades in the past, where everyone in the town becomes ghosts, and like nobody can visit. Like people can't come and go because weird things happen when they do. And so our main character and 2 of her childhood friends are the only 3 people that are able to sort of cross that barrier and go into this town. And it's become this sort of paranormal phenomenon where there's these like paranormal teams that come, and they're trying to like investigate and see what's going on, because it's just such a big mystery. And so she sort of teams up with this paranormal team, our main character Talitha, to once again go like, and it's been like 20 years since this event happened, but she kind of decides to go with this paranormal team and enter the town and do some investigating. And so it was a really, like I said, unique story, and that was the reason I wanted to pick it up in the first place, and it definitely delivered in that regard. And I think that there were some really great moments of description and imagery. 2 in particular chapter endings, where just the way she described something in like literally a sentence, I was like, my jaw dropped. And so overall, I think it too had some pretty strong themes having to do with home, and how for a lot of people, home isn't necessarily a place that you fondly think of or that gives you the warm and fuzzies. Sometimes home in your past can be very traumatic and can be a place that you don't look so fondly upon, and I really liked that theme. So overall, I enjoyed this. I gave it 3 stars. I don't know why. I feel like I maybe should have rated it higher than that, because I did enjoy it quite a bit. But at the same time, there are parts of it that I think in a couple months I would forget, and I couldn't tell you what this book was. So yeah, yeah, it was good, 3 stars. The audiobook was narrated by Jennifer Pickens, and it was also good. So yeah. Then I did another library book slash audiobook combo. I listened to The Divorcees by Rowan Beard, and this was another one that was a 2024 release that I was looking forward to reading. And so I put it on hold at the library and it came in, so I went ahead and read it. And this one is a historical fiction about our main character, Lois. It takes place in the 1950s, and she is in a marriage where she's not happy and she wants to get a divorce. But in the 1950s in America, divorce was a little harder to attain. It was just more complicated because socially it wasn't as accepted. The courts made it a little more difficult for women to file and things like that. So there was an area though, Reno, Nevada, where you could get a divorce and you didn't really need to have a reason or anything. The only thing you had to do to file was you had to be a resident of Reno for 6 weeks. So there are these, or there is this sort of commune place where women go to live for 6 weeks to establish their residency so they can file for divorce. And in the meantime, yeah, they're just all hanging out together. There's a pool and like all this stuff. And then they go gambling in the evenings and wait until they can get their divorce finalized. And they, you know, the women have various reasons for, you know, not wanting to be married anymore. Some of them have children, some of them don't. And yeah, it's sort of just this sort of study on this particular time in America and what it was like for women when it came to divorce. And for me, this book was okay. I gave it 2.5 stars. And I think the reason was because I liked what I had to say about the topic, 1950s marriage, women, and that whole thing. I thought it was interesting. And our main character, Lois, was an interesting character in that she was very lonely and kind of depressing, but she was also sort of interesting. And I feel like she sort of was a mirror and like sort of reflected what I think a lot of women at the time felt, who were sort of forced into these situations that they didn't necessarily want, but society sort of pushed them into, like marriage and having children and not having career aspirations and things like that. I think a lot of women felt that way, and Lois was one of those people. So I thought that that was an interesting study. My problem with this book was it was very, very repetitive. It was like these women are in this, like I said, commune for 6 weeks, and they are literally just doing the same thing every day. They get up, they go to the pool for a while, they all eat breakfast together, they go to the pool for a while, they all gather around together to eat dinner, then they all get ready and they go out and they gamble every single day. And it just got repetitive and got kind of boring. And I think if I wasn't listening to it on audio, I would have DNF'd it. So not so great. Like I said, I gave it a 2.5 star. The topic was interesting, but in the end, it was kind of a bore. And then the last book I read in May was The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. This was the only book I physically read, and it was big. It was like 550 pages, so it took me the whole month to read because I had started this in April. And Kate Morton's books tend to be that way. They tend to be slow and you just sort of take your time, but they always end up delivering. And for me, this one was good. It dealt with a woman whose grandmother, back in the early 1900s, was found as a like 4-year-old girl on this ship that was sailing from England to Australia, and she was found on this ship without any sort of guardian. And so the, I can't remember what he was called. He was like the shipmaster or something, took her in and raised her. And then when she reached adulthood, he told her that, you know, she wasn't really his child and that how he found her and stuff. So in her adulthood, she sort of started to sort of investigate what happened to her. Like, who was she really? Where did she come from and all that? And so then her granddaughter, in the present day, which the present day in this case is, I think, 2005. She is sort of picking up where her grandmother left off and trying to figure out her family history. So very typical Kate Morton story with, you know, multi-generational things going on. You're going back and forth in time. This one had a really cool sort of fairy tale element because one of the characters was a writer and wrote fairy tales, like that was her job. And so those are sort of sprinkled throughout, and even the setting, there's eventually you get to a point where there is a setting where it is this little cottage on a cliff, like by the sea, and kind of adjacent to it, there is this sort of secret garden. It's like walled in, and like to get to the garden there's a gate and like all this stuff, and it's just this really cool secretive place that just screams fairy tale. So those vibes were really cool in this. Though I enjoyed this, it definitely is my least favorite of the Kate Mortons I've read. Every Kate Morton I've read has been between a 4 and like a 4.75. I read her newest book, Homecoming, earlier this year, and it was almost a 5-star, and that one is like my new favorite of hers. This one's probably my least, and it's not that there was anything wrong with it. I think that just the story itself just didn't hold my interest as much as her other books. And for me, like the big sort of reveal that happened was kind of obvious to me, and it seems like it's a plot that you see, I don't want to say you see it often, but I've seen it before, and so it wasn't like super like unique or different, but it did also at the same time kind of tie in to the whole fairy tale theme element of this book. So it wasn't terrible, but like, again, I've read better Kate Mortons. So this one, I ended up giving it a 3.5. Like I said, normally her books are like at least a 4, but this one just didn't quite do it. But it was still good. If it sounds interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. And that's it, guys. Those are the books I read in May. Like I said, it was a slow month. Hopefully June will be better. So far it is, because I've already completed a book this month. So let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to know. And let me know what your favorite book of May was, because I would love to know that too. So that is it. I hope that you are having a great week, and I will chat with you soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.